Good afternoon, everybody from Berlin. I have a very interesting rum here from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which is unusual for a number of reasons. First of all, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, which was founded in 1983, is primarily about whiskies. There's no two ways about that. They started creating a line of rums with the R.1.X series all the way down to, I think, 15 or 16 by now. They've probably got less than 150 to date after all these years, as opposed to thousands of whiskeys, but we got to live with that. They've always been distinguished, the society, by a number of different things. One is their consistency of labeling with those peculiar names that they have on them, the numbering sequence, 1.1, 1.2, 2.x, whatever, or 145.5. And of course, the rums are 1.1 all the way through. They've got gins, armagnacs, cognacs, and so on. They've certainly started to expand their horizons quite a bit. They're moving into blends. They've become a stockist of some note. And if you look at their listing of the rums that they have, you could suggest, yes, they did start doing rums in 2011. That's not this one. This one came out in 2001, as were the other two in the line. There was a Jamaican Moneymusk, there was a Guyanese Port Morant, and the Barbadian Rockley still rum. So that by itself makes it sufficiently unusual. And it was not even issued to the subscribers. You have to pay a little bit of money to become a member of the society, which gives you the privilege of buying the bottles for yet more money, right? That's all that the subscription gives you. But this was done for the shareholders, and it's my opinion, unsubstantiated, that this was sort of like something somebody had an idea about, and they wanted to kind of like put it out the door to test the interest in whether they should expand their horizons beyond just whiskeys. Almost nobody knows about them, and almost nobody I know has them. I think there's a friend of mine in London who has one of them, in Jamaica perhaps, but Marco Freyer, in whose place I crashed for a day or two a few days ago, he has all three. Two of them are unopened. This is the one that he was allowed to share with me because he hasn't cracked the other two yet. And this is the Barbados 1986 to 2001 Rockley Still style rum from at 64.4%. Moving on to a different tendril, I want to make it clear that there is no such thing as a Rockley Still. There's only a Rockley style of rum, if you call it. Even that is very indeterminate. And, if you were to ask anybody to define what it is, they'd have a real difficult time. There is no Rockley Still. No, not the refurbished Vulcan Still. That isn't it. There has been some confusion about how the name came about, but my feeling is it has something to do with the fact that Word is located outside the neighborhood of Bridgetown, Barbados, called Rockley, right? And I did actually put out a small essay where I pulled together all the information that I was able to glean from various sources about it. Marco has a lot more, but he kind of substantiates most of what I say with a few Phillips here and there. Be that as it may, there are a lot of independent bottlers out there. The most famous may be Bristol Spirits, but Cadenhead, I think, did one. Gordon MacPhail or A.D. Rattray and some of the other young indies, they've put out versions of the 1986. If you see a 1986 Barbados rum, it's very likely it comes from the same source as this one. Why did the SMWS issue this? I really don't know. If it was only issued to the shareholder, then it's very likely that all they really did want to do, as I've mentioned, is to check and see the interest on whether this was something that they could go forward with. But as it turned out, they may have issued it in 2001, but it took another 10 years for them to actually start a regular run of rum lines. And the bottle is absolutely different. Unfortunately, I don't have one to share with you here, but it is up on the written review, which I'm posting concurrently with this video review. Right. So what do we have? We have a 64.4% Barbados rum, which is very likely, I think it's more than likely to be a column still rum, and it's 15 years old. And they say on the label that it was done in a sherry cask, but I can tell you from my own tasting notes that it's very unlikely that it was the full 15 years maturation. And I don't know if they split maturation, all in Barbados, all in Europe. I really don't know that either. But it's very unlikely that it was in a sherry cask the whole time. There just isn't that kind of influence there. It's more likely to have been a finish of some kind for X amount of months. All right. Again, not enough information available for me to tell you more. Let's just try it. Well, you can't get away from 64.4%, but it is unusual for all sorts of reasons. For example, what you're smelling is burnt bell peppers, sort of like grilled tomatoes that you just chuck on a barbie somewhere in a sour miso soup. It's got that kind of combination of burnt notes of, perhaps it was a charred barrel, who knows, A little bit of sweet, a little bit of sour. There are raisins, dates, plums, figs. And strangely enough, there's also some ashy notes, like when you smoke a cigarette in the rain or something like that. There's that disgusting ashy smell that you get sometimes. It's like that, as well as a sort of like a rye bread with cream cheese or some kind. It's really quite interesting. It melds together fairly well, and it's not a bad dram by any means. Let's taste it. Well, it's dampened down quite a bit from some of the more minerally notes that I got on the nose. Spices come out a bit more, so you get some vanilla and some cinnamon. There's a little bit of dusty notes, like if you were in Hogwarts Library or something, trying to pick out something from the restricted section. There is also a sort of a yeasty and bready taste to it, which is offset by a kind of salty Marmite spread on top of all of that. But the nice thing is that the fruits are all there, right? So you're going to get the dates, you're going to get raisins, a little bit of grapes. You'll notice how little I'm actually saying about any kind of sherry influence here, and that's because I am not tasting it. Now, people whose palates are more sensitive than mine or whose noses are better can probably say, yep, nope, absolutely, I can taste the sherry right here. I'm not really getting too much of that. There isn't even a winey note of any kind to make it there. It's a bit salty, it's a bit sweet, and it's got that little bit of sour blending over from the nose. Overall, I'd have to say that this is a rum that, if it was made today, would do no dishonor whatsoever to any bottler that decides to put it out the door. It's really quite good. And in point of fact, I'm scoring it at 85 points. What else do I want to say? It's almost impossible to find, right? I think Marco picked it up at an auction at some point many years ago, and he's just held on to them ever since. And he has never bothered to open them because, well, his interests lie in other directions. He waits for somebody to come and pop up at his doorstep like I did before he actually opens one of the things or shares something that he has already cracked. Is it worth any kind of money if you were to buy it at auction? Well, probably, because you're never going to get it from the society anymore. They've long since run out. And my own feeling about the society itself is I think that they really should pay more attention to rums, because I think that's an untapped market that they're worrying about. The problem with this is, of course, is that to buy these things, you have to get a subscription, which costs, whatever it is, 80 to 100 pounds per year. And then on top of that, you have to pay the X amount of pounds that it costs to get the bottle. And then you have to ship it to yourself, depending on which part of the world you're in. And that tends to add up a lot of costs. When you've got a whole lot of independent bottlers that are producing stuff of equal quality, perhaps better, perhaps worse, but let's say it's about the same, at a much lesser cost, then it really doesn't lead you to believe that this is value for money. And that's, of course, the equation that most people look at when they buy a rum of any age or any strength. They put all these things together and say, well, is it worth it to me? I must endorse the rum as it stands, just as a rum. 85 points is by no means a bad score. It's like where things are starting to get really, really good, and it tastes well. It's got enormous chops at 64.4%. It's for the price that I can't endorse it. So unless you get it at something less than 100 pounds or 100 euros or so on, it's not going to go anywhere. And really, why would you want to? Because there aren't that many out there. And the only reason you're going to want it is if you're a Barbadian rum fanatic who is particularly interested in the Rockley style of rums. So I can't endorse it on the basis of the price, but I can say that it is a very nice piece of work for how it tastes and how it presents. Beyond that, I've got nothing else to tell you. I think that's good enough for what it is. And we'll do some more interesting rums in the days to come, because I'm really on a tear these last few days, and there's more to come. And until then, have a good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.